Welcome to the show. Now please strap in for the truth and remember the words of the great Tom Cruise.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Now welcome to Off Topic on Porn.
Times now, what exactly is going on? Every single time we do a podcast or a presentation, there's some deal that's imminent, and there's some promise by President Trump, and then of course, then Iran comes back and says no deal is in place. So more political theater. But with respect to this and why this is such a important news story is the fact that what's going on in Iran is that just today, of course, today we record this show on Sunday evenings, but although it doesn't get pushed out till Tuesdays. But as of Sunday, as of today, so far, knock on wood, the U.S. and Iran have reached a tentative agreement. And I think part of what's happening that we didn't have in prior announcements related to what's going on is that we actually have an ally. We actually have Saudi Arabia. And so it's not just the U.S. and Israel, but it's the U.S., Israel, Saudi Arabia, and other partners putting the pressure on Iran to reach a deal. Now, I think that's been the difference, because as long as it's just U.S. and Israel doing the attacks, doing the bombings, doing the negotiations, Iran has been basically thumbing their nose against in this war and presenting themselves like they are successfully and valiantly defending their homeland against the evil aggressors of U.S. and Israel. That's all propaganda. The fact of the matter is, the country is getting hit really hard, and unfortunately, we don't wish war on anyone, because in every war, in every conflict, you have situations where innocent people, are being caught in the crossfires. Even if a country invaded the U.S., I would feel for our soldiers, our communities, but also families and people that are not involved in these situations, in these in the fighting. So it's like glorified war. But as of today, let's see what's going on. Took a few notes. All of a sudden, Iran is saying if they capitulate on the deal, they want the U.S. to honor the original terms of the agreement in principle that they set up. And if you recall, we talked about this. They want the U.S. to commit to spending $300 billion to help rebuild Iran's country after an attack. Now, with respect to Trump's critics, the Democrats are saying, why this waste? We didn't win anything. The U.S. is not safe. It's not safer, as President Trump, argued for this warfare. And I would disagree with that, because the thing is, the main thing we want to denuclearize Iran. Remember, this is the same country since 1979 has been saying, death to Israel, death to Israel, death to America. And they mean it. If your enemy tells you, I'm going to attack you, believe them. Eventually they will. So it's not like this is an idle threat. So if this deal sticks, I would say that this will be pretty good news. It does allow for the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is looking to control it in some kind of cooperative agreement. That's probably safe face type of maneuver. Let them have that. As long as the ships go through, I think we're doing good. Because the thing is, they controlled it beforehand. It's not like they're gaining something by controlling the Strait of Hormuz. They've always controlled it. So let them have that. As long as they're not imposing tolls or restrictions or controlling the world's oil through a choke point. I think I think it's a good development. And it was interesting. Secretary of State Marco Rubio went on the press tour and says that Iran has never dealt with a president like Trump, and that's true. And that's not meant to be a swipe at President Obama, President Clinton, but he was saying that Iran is used to dealing with America that doesn't want to fight. And not only that, but European nations that don't want to fight either. So, they're used to being bellicose and beating their chests and getting away with whatever they want to do because, heaven forbid, war is bad. But war is necessary. I think about this all the time. When you're little, you are in elementary or middle school or high school, and you have that one kid, that one bully who likes to just pluck you in the ear or hit you in the back of the head or spill your textbooks or something like that. What's the one thing you can't do? You can't tell the bully, hey, I don't like what you're doing. You need to stop it. And if you agree to stop it, I'll leave you alone. They'll say, yeah, right, I'm going to keep doing it because you're not stopping me. And so sometimes it takes bopping that bully in the nose for them to get the point. Maybe a good blood nose will teach them that you're not the person to be messed with. And unfortunately, that's human nature. And that's the case with Iran as well. As, as, as long as the United States and Israel and Europe keep telling this country, this regime, hey, you better stop it, they're going to say, yeah, right, make me. So the only way you respond to a bully is by force. And I think that with this potential ground invasion between U.S., Israel, and Saudi Arabia, I think now Iran is getting the message. President Trump announced over the weekend that I was looking this up. He says that Iran can expect to see a ground invasion, the likes of which hasn't been seen since World War II. So this is something that's pretty epic of what's going on in the Middle East, and I think they finally got the point. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in the next few days between now and when this podcast release. So it seems to me that Iran is finally ready to capitulate. Okay, that's that news story. The other news story I wanted to cover today on this podcast is what's going on in Europe. Europe and immigration. Of course, here in the United States, immigration has been such a hot topic. And it's such a volatile issue. On the one hand, you have people that view immigrants as people who sneak across the border. These are murderers and rapists, and they need to be stopped, deported, detained, all of the above. And on the other hand, you have people that say, well, wait a second, our my ancestors, my family members, these are families that just want a better life. They just want a chance to work. If there's Americans that don't want to work, hey, there's 10 other immigrants that do want to work. Let's not blame them for just wanting a better life. And unfortunately, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But over in Europe, we had a situation just recently where about 60,000 migrants from Morocco tried to flood the North African enclave of Ceuta. I had to look that up. And it's interesting because, this is a migrant surge. Of course, we've had these in the United States for the last several years. Upwards of 50 and 100,000 migrants is all coming up to the U.S. border and entering our country. And that's the kind of things that really galvanized American voters to support President Trump. And if you look back at old clips of President Obama, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, there are clips of them saying that immigration enforcement is very lax. There's long been a need to clamp down on our porous borders, our open borders. And so people on both sides of the political aisle have actually said this. We need to control our borders. This is a problem. It's just that with respect to Donald Trump, he's actually doing something about that. Now, the thing about Europe, Spain and Morocco, is that you have these individuals, 60,000 people tried to flood into Spanish territory. They were stopped by the military, police. They set up a flotilla. They blocked these people from entering into Spain illegally. And since that time, um, I was reading that 72 people died, people who were stomped, trampled, drowned. Yeah, it was a mass stampede. It's chaos. Now that's kind of it kind of exemplifies what's at stake with respect to illegal immigration. You can't have a situation where large amounts of people try to break into a country or to spill into a country. And we can't have that in America. We can't have that in Europe either. And the thing about liberal Democrats in America is that people often say, wait a second, we need to be more humane. We need to be like, we need to be like Europe. They allow all these people into their countries. And yeah, about that, as we can see this past weekend, they didn't do that. I mean, in fact, most of the people in Morocco have been turned back. They went back into their country. Now, of course, you look at the map, Spain and Morocco they're just separated by the Mediterranean, so it's not like they traveled thousands of miles to get into the country. But it goes to show you that even enlightened European nations, there's still immigration laws, and they still enforce them. So, if every other country in the world can enforce their borders, the United States can as well. And I think that's something we got to keep in mind on. I was going to mention something else with respect to immigration in Europe. This kind of went below the radar screen in the American news media. There is an actual EU migrant pact that was put into place uh, earlier in July, this past month. 10 nations have agreed to come together to identify, provide health screenings and health checks, and implement security checks. I'm looking at my notes. Implement security checks from people coming into these 10 European nation affiliated countries. And you can be detained up to 12 weeks under this plan. So it's not like the people in Europe are saying, come on in. President Trump was highly criticized when he fought for asylum in Mexico. And if you recall that plan, under the old system, someone would come to the United States, they would file for and seek asylum, and they basically be given a number and told, okay, report back whenever, 6 months, a year, however long you're supposed to report back, and then the courts will process your case. Well, that's kind of a joke because by then people leave. They disappear into the United States, and that's what's happened in America. People come to the country, they seek asylum, and then they just never report, and they disappear. And under President Trump, what has happened is that after them being gone and not reporting for maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever the case may be, you have people thinking, I got away with it. I'm in the country legally now. And I got married, bought homes, had children, grandchildren, set up businesses, and they didn't think about it. But, they're finding out that, wait a second, I can't do that. I couldn't do that. I violated the terms of my asylum process. I'm not in this country legally. And, with respect to what's going on in Europe, yeah, they're not allowing that, and I think it's important. This is not about being anti-brown or anti-black or anti-migrant or whatever the case may be. Immigration law is all about enforcing the laws and to keep us safe. Like in Europe, hey, we need to identify these people because you never know who's coming over the borders. You don't know if the person is a murderer, a rapist, a drug trafficker, a drug dealer, or like I mentioned earlier, just an honest person trying to get a job. We don't know any of these people because there's no identification. And so, steps are being taken in Europe to identify people. And maybe we need to do something similar here. And also the other issue about health checks, because the thing is, if someone's coming in from a foreign country, you don't know what that person has. That person could have COVID, HIV, whatever the case may be. They may have some kind of any number of infectious diseases. So, it's important that we screen the people coming into our country. They may be bringing in something that's going to be detrimental to public health. And yeah, the other issue is security checks. That's kind of a no-brainer. Let's make sure that the people coming in are safe. Make sure they're not trying to smuggle in anything. We can't just say, come on in, just, open the doors, just have a life in America. We don't know anything about you. So I think it's interesting what's going on in Europe. It's a bit of a microcosm to what should be going on in America. Now, I do think the United States has an opportunity to streamline the immigration process. This idea of someone coming into our country and spending years and years and years and having to hire an expensive immigration lawyer and chugging through a process. I don't know about you guys, but I remember applying for a passport. That took months, and I live here. I'm an American citizen, and it takes forever because it's bureaucratic. So I can imagine if I went to a foreign country, let's say Canada, where I know the language at least, and I applied for asylum in Canada. Actually, interestingly enough, I did a DNA test, and I'm part Cajun because I'm from Louisiana. So yeah, some of my ancestors are from France by way of Canada at some point. So break out the squeeze box and the Cajun étouffée and the crawfish and laissez les bâtons rouler. Let the good times roll. That's my background. But anyway, let's say I wanted to seek asylum in Canada. Um, I don't know the Constitution of Canada. I don't know the laws of Canada. I don't know how to maneuver the political system in Canada. I'm an American. I'm a foreigner. And I can only imagine what it must be like for people coming into America. They don't even speak the same language. At least Canada. I can speak Canadian, eh? Oh, drink a Molson, eh? So that's something I think we can do a better job at. A better job with respect to America. We could make it, a little bit more user friendly to people seeking to come into our country legally, make it easier for people to come in legally because, for the people that are here with good intentions, yeah, we actually want people to come in and live the American dream and come to our country legally. It's when they come in illegally or with bad intentions, that's the problem. I would love to say all immigrants are good. And I think it's a valid criticism to say not all immigrants are bad, but either way, without a framework in place, we don't know, and that's what makes it difficult. All right. So anyway, like I said, it's just myself today, and we don't have the benefit of Russell. And folks, pray for Russell right now. I don't know when you're going to see this this episode, but he's in camp right now. He took he and his family he took his family to camp, and it's a Bible camp. It's really nice. You think a Bible camp, yeah, it's a Bible camp. It's peaceful. It's in upstate New York. It's a religious camp, Christian camp, and learn. You eat good food. You know, I think when I went to this particular camp, I don't think there was internet. There was internet. I mean, I'm not going to say it's off the grid because it's not, but it's peaceful. It's a good respite. It's a good break from the workaday world because I think you need that. And this is free of charge. I was thinking about this the other day. Remember in the Bible, Jesus often going alone to pray. That's a good thing. It's kind of mentioned like, okay, yeah, he took a day off. But I think this is the word of God, this is scripture. So I think there's wisdom there. I think we all in our workaday worlds need to have time to take off and to pray, to be alone with God. And you know what? They didn't have phones and cell phones and internet and Wi-Fi and texting and podcasts and newspapers or whatever. And I think that's a good thing because I think we all need a time of rest. So my hat's off to you, Mr. Russell Cruzan. Enjoy your vacation, my friend. And for all you folks who are enjoying yourself and hopefully enjoying this podcast, I just wish you a happy summer. I hope you get some rest before school starts up. I don't know about you guys, but here in Texas, I think that school starts up like mid-August, so it's coming up pretty quickly. I remember school starting up sometime after Labor Day, but it's starting up sooner. So whatever vacation time you have, please take it because it's going to get busy again. Now, uh, that's pretty much our show. That's what I have. And just a reminder to folks, you don't always have to be on topic. You can be off topic, but you must always be on point. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.